Good morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world. My name is Doug Brunke. I am the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. Marketing is one of those really essential aspects of growing internationally that we all need to do. Unfortunately, most of us don't do it really well. And so we have a monthly conversation about marketing and global marketing. And to take it one step further, we have three global marketing superstars here today who will be talking about their building your brand. And the power of storytelling in branding, how to tell a compelling brand story. And so that's a key aspect of marketing, right? What is your story? And if you don't have a good story, you're just not heard as much as others. This week, as some of you know, I've had my birthday, and it's also my grandmother's birthday. My grandfather was my mentor, and he was an amazing storyteller. When you think about what happened in the past, 100 years ago, 200 or 300 years ago, the stories people told were so important because there wasn't much else going on. And what I found with my grandfather was that he would tell stories and they were so embellished. As a child, I didn't recognize that they were embellished, but part of the attraction for me and probably my connection with him and why he became my mentor was not just his accomplishments, but the stories he told were so vivid. And I can still tell them. I still tell one of his stories that's in German, and I say it in German, but it's not even German. I don't even know what it is. It's, in Verlies de Loise wecken, which doesn't even probably mean anything in German, but it's the story of humans and how we interact with each other, and don't touch the tooth of a tiger, and don't do some bad things that disturb the world. Just do the right thing. And through his stories, he taught me and he connected to me. And that's what we want to do in our businesses, right? We want to be able to make connections. We want the right people to be involved with us. And so storytelling is so essential. So Meg Seitz is our leader here today. Meg, thank you for bringing us together along with Susan Lindner and Nacho Villoch. Both of those speakers you've brought together are experts in that. And you're amazing. Your marketing company, Toth Shop, and you're based in North Carolina, is so excellent. And initially, what I learned about you and what you do is the content aspect of marketing you're so good at. But at the end of the day, marketing is so much more than that. It's listening to people, it's understanding what's unique about the business, what market needs to be gone after, and what are the connections that need to be made. And then what are the stories that can be told to be able to make the connections. It's not a simple process, and you make it look very easy. So we look really forward to the conversation today. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you. Well, I just wanted to say too, as Doug said, my name is Meg Seitz. I run a company called Toth Shop, and we are creative communications that really focuses on the human side of marketing, branding, PR, like I said, communications and content, and really putting people at the center of our brand stories. And so I'm excited. Doug and team were so gracious to clear some space for us this year. I really wanted to make sure that the Global Chamber was talking about marketing and branding and communications on a monthly basis, because it's something wherever we are in the world, whatever our business is, we are talking marketing, branding, and communications. So what we've done over the course of this year is we have a number of topics each month that we're tackling. And so this month, actually, I really wanted to get both Susan and Nacho together. So we were originally going to have this conversation in March, and we bumped it to April so that everyone could be here. So So I'm excited to have this conversation about brand storytelling and being a storyteller for yourself as a personal brand, but also for your organization. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to moderate a conversation among the three of us, but really, obviously, Susan and Nacho are the stars today. And what I'll do is I will introduce both of them, and then we'll get into some questions if that sounds good to everybody. So first of all, I want to introduce Susan Lindner. Susan is the founder and CEO of Innovation Storytellers. She mastered the art of storytelling when she was working as an international aid officer in rural Thailand in the 1990s, helping to slow the spread of HIV by turning sex workers into entrepreneurs. Today, Susan works in Fortune 500 boardrooms around the world, helping leaders craft the personal and globe brand stories that bring their teams together around breakthrough ideas. She has worked with C-level leaders and teams for more than 60 countries at companies like Deloitte, ExxonMobil, GE, Corning, Citi, AT&T, the World Health Organization, and the World Bank on their brand narratives and storytelling strategies. So welcome, Susan. I'm so glad you're here. I also want to introduce Nacho Villoch. Nacho, an all-terrain communicator. Nacho has over 2 decades of experience generating content about innovation, talent, sustainability, and the digital transformation. He is currently Innovation Managing Director of the Silver Economy Hub and chair of the Malaga chapter of our Global Chamber. He's the author of several business and entrepreneurial books, including A Brief History of the Future, which he published in 2021. And it's a book that connects innovation of the past with a compelling vision of the future through vivid stories. His vibrant use of language and metaphorical map of learnings engage readers. He holds a degree in law and specialties in international marketing, in addition to several post-grad degrees from places like Columbia and Georgetown. And he holds a master's in let me see if I can get this right, oceanographic sciences. He's lived and worked in 4 continents in managerial positions in the financial industry. So I'm excited for both of you. I mean, visitors here, members of the Global Chamber, you have 2 absolute storytelling powerhouses as part of this conversation. And I'm just happy to moderate this conversation and contribute where I see fit. So I'll start it out. What we're going to do is talk about a couple key areas of brand storytelling. And what I want to do, and if you were part of our first conversation in February in this series, I'd like to start out with some education and what I like to call 101, which is kind of your intro course. So if we're talking brand storytelling 101, I'm going to pass it to Susan and then I'll pass to Nacho. But Susan, I'm curious, how do you define brand storytelling? And then what are the key elements of a compelling brand story and how a business can start to develop it if this is new territory for a brand?
Yeah, so I think, and thank you so much. I think there are some core elements that get really to the heart of brand storytelling. It's an opportunity to really talk about the brand's values, history, and its message. And one other thing I'd add to that is the promise that you make to your customers every day and why you make it. So it goes beyond just presenting facts and figures or the features and benefits of your product, but the goal is to create an emotional connection that builds trust and loyalty over time. So a brand narrative is different than just your advertising campaign. It's intended to evoke emotion on the part of the listener so that they feel even more connected to the brand and to the point where they feel inseparable from it. And the brand becomes part of who they are, not just as a standalone thing. So a great brand narrative makes you more relatable, more human, more memorable. And that alone helps drive engagement and awareness and hopefully sales.
Yeah, you bring up such a good point because, and I wrote it down here, about, the brand storytelling is about becoming even more connected. This is different than your Instagram ads, your LinkedIn ads. Like, this is different. This is like the deep gut work that brands do. This is a whole other level. This is beyond the copy that you see on the website or beyond the copy you see in ads.
100%.
Nacho, how do you balance? You have a deep history of storytelling, and I'm curious, how do you, or what's your advice on how you balance authenticity and that humanity of storytelling with both the strategic messaging when an organization is crafting a brand story? How do you blend the two?
Well, actually, following on building on what Susan just said about building trust, I think the key is be real, be true, be authentic. And it can be very complicated or it can be very easy. As easy as do what you say what you do. And actually, many companies, they say they're doing something and they are doing just the opposite. So if you follow that very simple rule of do as you say and say as you do, that will help you. And in order to align it, to have it aligned with your strategy, have a purpose and have a why. Who has a why finds a way. That purpose should be aligned with the corporate values. Many companies they have corporate values and they have a big portrait in the human resources department that with the top 5 or 6 or top 6 values of the company, but then the communication is not aligned, is not consistent with that the manifest, that declaration. If you probably you're aware, there's this magic circle or golden circle of start with why of Simon Sinek. So that why can be that purpose that can help you with the story harvesting. I like very much story harvesting before storytelling. So if you start harvesting those picking up those inside stories, then those are the ones worth to sell. And do not hire a big consultant company, a big I don't know, McCann Erickson or Ogilvy or one of these names that they build a brand, because at the end, all these big corporate brands, they look like the same because they are done by the same people. So try to do a nice in-depth story harvesting within your company and be real and be authentic, and then have it aligned with your purpose.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point because so many times people kind of go at it and they're like, oh, let's tell stories, and they haven't made that effort to harvest the stories. So if let's say an organization is new to that idea of harvesting, what's the first step they should take? Maybe who should they bring together? Like what's maybe the one question they could think about in that story harvesting process?
Well, I will begin with your staff, with your employees, with your own colleagues. And you don't need to hire just good-looking actors or models to tell your story, to be the characters of your story. It's a very good temptation to hire a popular name, one Hollywood top star if you can afford it, or a recognized model and very good looking. But that probably is not authentic. It's not it's not the DNA of your if your company is really multi-ethnic. I mean, be brave and show all the diversity, although it might be one of those forbidden words. Even if your company is organized, is working from, I don't know, rednecks in Utah or in Idaho, okay, those are the real people. You do not want to use a Wall Street wolf to impersonate your brand. That will not connect. That will not be truthful.
That is so true. Go to your people first. Don't go to an outside source first. Please that's such a great point. So Nacho made a point about the why, and Susan, I love to tap you on the why as well. So many businesses struggle with defining their why. I mean, it's a big question. What advice do you have on, how a brand can maybe start to uncover, or like Nacho was saying, harvest, like how do they get to the why in communicating their brand's deeper purpose?
So, here in the US, we have a long history of entrepreneurship, right? I think Microsoft is about to celebrate its 50th anniversary, which makes me feel super young. But if you can, and not all companies have this, great opportunity, but go back to the founder story. And I think there are, key elements of a brand narrative that every brand needs to have. Step one is the founder story. If you can go back that far, fantastic. What was the motivation behind the founder to begin this company? Because chances are there are core values that you can extract from that initial experience, even if they were making, buggy whips back in the day, right? Or they were potato farmers back in the day, and now you're making software, right? Even if there was this massive shift, chances are there are core values of those founders that still exist today. If you are working in an organization that has been gone through mergers and acquisitions and shifts and changes 1,000 times, you might have lost touch with the founder story. So what is the new horizon, right? The reason that we come to work is potentially an opportunity for something greater that is our future. So what are the core values associated with now mining that future opportunity? So you might be looking forward rather than looking backward. So these are two poles that you can look at to generate those core values, and to rely on that first level of the brand story, which is the beginning. Other stories, because there's not one story that tells the brand narrative, by the way, there are chapters, because we're hitting different target audiences all the time, and we're trying to make different points with our story. So a couple of stories that are absolutely critical. Number one is the founder story, if you can reach it. Number two is the value story. So what is it that we produce that actually makes the listener of our story, what is making their life better? So this is called a goodwill story. And by the way, the research shows us that when we tell a goodwill story, i.e., one that's going to make someone else's life better, the human brain lights up. It impacts us in a very different way. And in fact, we know it increases, it reduces stress levels in the listener when I know that I'm hearing a story about someone who's desiring to make my life better. It creates reward giving opportunity and greater caregiving opportunity. That's what happens in the human brain. What do I mean by that? So caregiving related opportunity is, I want to see you succeed. And it's I'm an anthropologist. It's a very ancient mechanism in the human brain. And it triggers actually that thing that holds society together. If we are ancients living together, I would say to you, eat this mushroom, don't eat this mushroom, it'll kill you, and maybe save this other wacky mushroom for Saturday night, right? This is the way that we talk to one another to help one another survive, that value story. In today's world, that's an Amazon review or a Yelp review. So buy this air conditioner, don't buy this air conditioner. This air conditioner changed my life. Now my mother feels comfortable in her nursing home and I have peace of mind as a result, right? So that's a value story. It's actually a trigger that says our human society cares for one another. And that's a really powerful story from a brand that says we care about you. So the other is one more story. It's really important, is the customer story. So I don't want to hear it from my mouth. I want to hear it from the mouth of someone else. And by the way, the research shows us, and the advent of social media tells us, that I don't actually believe the company anymore. It's not enough for me to tell a brand story as the CEO of the company. I need my employees to tell it, and I need my customers to tell it. And if they don't, you're suspect. I don't believe you. So it's the difference of, when you think about being on social media, what's the difference between liking a story and sharing a story? When I share a story, I'm invested in it. I'm putting my personal brand on the line. Forget about your corporate brand. I'm putting my personal brand on the line. And then when I share it, it is 10 times more powerful than just me saying it alone. So even if you're working on a corporate story or a brand narrative, your job should always be, how will I get other people to share it? Is it authentic enough, to Nacho's point? Is it authentic enough that I would want to put it on my page as an employee or a customer because I believe in it that strongly? And that may take some time, but that's the level of authenticity that we're looking for. And then finally, the last of the 5 stories that every company needs is the future looking story, is what's next. Because I don't believe in your narrative if I can't see myself in the future of it. So not just today, but what's coming next. So if you're doing right by me today, but tomorrow you change your mind and do something else, I don't know if I want to hitch my star to that wagon. You know, I might feel a bit trepidatious about whether or not I want to share. So can you lay out for me what's coming next so that I can go, oh, I can't wait to tell my friends about you. And I'm excited about the next chapter of this story.
Yeah, I think one thing you're tapping into, Susan, too, is the idea that we expect our consumers, customers, even our team members to know what our future is. And how do they know unless we've crafted that story for them? They don't know. So how can we craft that story? To Nacho's point about kind of harvesting internally first, like how do we bring our team together to craft the future vision so we can share it, so people aren't making assumptions?
And by the way, does your CEO actually have a vision?
Yes, that is such, I was at a guest speaker yesterday, and he reminded, it was such a good call out, because he was reminding all of us to be like, what's the vision? What's the CEO's vision? What's the company's vision? Like, what's the vision? Because that vision should be part of all pieces of your business strategy. And of course, in the scheme of this conversation, your storytelling too. Yes, absolutely. So obviously storytelling, as both Susan and Nacho have referenced, storytelling is critical today to marketing and branding and communications. It's how we build trust. It's how we get people to share our content, share what we're up to. Nacho, in this scheme of business, obviously we have a variety of businesses, sizes and scales and impact. I'm curious, from your experience in business, how can small businesses, startups, entrepreneurial ventures, like how can smaller organizations or things that are just getting rolling, how can they leverage storytelling to compete with the big guys, to compete with the larger brands who have a really long history of storytelling?
Okay, well, connecting again what with Susan said, this founder story is much closer with the small companies. Even if it was founded by your great grandfather, it's just 3 generations apart, and there has not been mergers and acquisitions and corporate takeovers in the middle, and probably the story has not been diluted with other outsider influences. On top of that, and again, from an anthropological point of view, people tend to empathize with the underdog, with the somehow with the small, with the small things. They say this is like a good perfume. Sometimes small is less is more. Small good perfumes can come in small bottles. So they are much more authentic. They are not so much like mass produced. And people try to empathize with that underdog that is really fighting against all odds to make it happen. And if we connect with some of those top universal stories that we mentioned in the last workshop, one of those universal stories is the fight against the monster, and that is from Little Red Riding Hood and the Big Bad Wolf and George and King Kong. So, and sometimes the big corporation is that big evil bad monster. And so that is small company that is struggling to fight and to defeat, and against all odds is David against Goliath. I mean, it is so embedded in our collective stories that really resonates with us. And the other story that also resonates is from rag to riches, from poor to rich, like Aladdin. And that story of Bill Gates in a garage, or Jeff Bezos in a garage, just with Jeff Bezos in a very, very humble way with a door without even having money to make a proper ad and paint it by itself, or Larry Page in a garage building Google, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft. That really resonates with that epic, and of course everybody recognizes today Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates are among the richest men in the world. But that story, even if it was 50 years ago, still resonates, and hey, you can do that. Is the American dream that you can get to be the next president of the United States if you work it hard. Or even coming from Austria, you can become a governor of California. So that kind of a story resonates in a very intimate way. So that is small companies can really do that, and probably they're going to sound more authentic. As I said
Yeah.
before, if you take any advertising, any storytelling dash propaganda dash advertising of an SP500, probably they look like the same. If you take out the logo and the brand, probably they're going to be talking with a very deep voice about how we take care of the world and sustainability and the future for everybody. And but is this an oil company? Is an energy company? Is an investment bank? What is that? Because they all resonate the same. They miss that connection with the heart, with the soul.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask Susan a question about storytelling and marketing in a second, but I want to just note for everyone who just heard Nacho's reply, he did not at any point say that the small guys can't compete with the big ones. If you are small, if you are just starting out, you have just as much presence. I think it's you as the founder and the organizer and the leader of your organization, you have to approach storytelling like that. So that's one little pep talk I'll give, is that sometimes when we're just starting out, you're like, I don't have any good stories to tell. And you absolutely do. The fact that you are starting something new is a story in and of itself. So I just wanted to make it, because Nacho, I think that was such a good point, that you absolutely can compete with the big guys. Susan, I'm curious, so in the scheme of marketing, what are some common mistakes that you see businesses make when they are trying to incorporate storytelling into their marketing strategy?
Well, I think sometimes they get the story wrong because they think it's about the product and not about the people.
Yeah.
And, you know, I like to tell my audiences when I'm giving talks that, you know, I think the greatest weapon ever invented in the history of Hollywood was the lightsaber. You know, if you are a Star Wars fan, thinking about Luke Skywalker with that lightsaber is the coolest thing ever. But the movie is not called Luke and the Lightsaber, right?
Right.
It is about how Luke saves the rest of us from Imperial domination and Darth Vader, you know.
Yeah.
And by the way, the lightsaber is just the tool that helped him do that and to help us. And so all the products and services we make are about the customer becoming the hero, about the employee being empowered to do something great. And if we spend all of our time focused on the thing, then we lose it. So, so that's a big problem, you know, and I constantly, especially, you know, for entrepreneurs who are so fixated on their product roadmap and making a product and getting it right. You know, never once did I hear Steve Jobs say, did you know that there are 963 pieces in an iPhone camera? Did you know that there are 4 independent wires that suspend the lens of the camera? And in fact, they're 1/10 the width of a human hair. Yeah. What Apple advertising did was instead focus on make your memories clearer and brighter so that you can remember the best times of your life.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's a shift of going, who really matters in this story? And who matters is talking about why we do what we do in order to serve who we serve and make their lives better. Make their lives better. Because that's the goodwill story that lights up the brain.
Yeah.
Now, from a marketing perspective, where people screw it up is that they don't incorporate the story into the other parts of the marketing world. So employees aren't trained on it. The receptionist who picks up the phone doesn't know it. It's not part of the orientation discussion, or it lives in the onboarding and orientation discussion, and you never hear about it again. And no one from a managerial perspective is repeating and talking about why that story and those values matter. In theory, great brand narrative should be repeatable by everyone in the organization.
Yeah.
It resonates with them. They've taken it in, they've made it their own, and they can repeat it. So brave brand marketers think about how to tell the story in ways that their employees, customers, vendors, etc., can remember it and repeat it. Because great storytelling requires that it be memorable and repeatable. So that's the work of brand marketers like us, is thinking about how to use the right words so that it doesn't feel like Legos in your mouth when you're trying to speak it.
Yeah, I mean, the worst thing is when you're like, I can't, it's almost like your team members feel like they have to memorize a monologue about their own marketing or storytelling. Like it should come so naturally that they don't have to A, worry about going to a script to remember their story, or B, getting it wrong. Because if somebody's ever afraid of getting it wrong, then that's a whole other level of, something within the company. But it should be easy for them to remember and to be able to repeat.
Yeah, for sure. And that means they have to see it for themselves. They have to feel themselves a part of the story
Yeah.
and the trajectory of that story for years to come. So it's incumbent upon managers to say, make the story relevant to you. Why does it matter? And then have employees kind of reiterate that sense. Like, I felt the story was important to me when I came to work here because I was working on X, and it played out for me with my customers, my suppliers, my vendors, my fellow colleagues in this way. And
Yeah.
that's how I remember it. So it has to go out and it has to come back in. And it does this
Yeah.
all the time. By the way, the other thing that does this is religion. The prophets told stories and parables that we are still repeating
Yeah.
hundreds, if not thousands of years later, because we took them in, we believed them, we made them our own, and then we repeated them. And we're still telling these stories thousands of years later because we believe them in here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You have to have that connection to the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I want to talk to just really quickly, just a really quick example. I'll start, but just a quick example of where we've seen some good storytelling or a good example of like of a brand that's doing well. And I'll give one example and then I'll open it up to both Nacho and Susan if they have an example. But um, to Susan's point, I was meeting with a new client, a couple of days ago, and they're a home builder. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and they're a home builder here in Charlotte. And what was so interesting, and this is my example of, doing well already, and this taps into a lot of the things that we've talked about, is that, in the scheme of being a home builder, we could have been talking about the features, the framework, the neighborhood, where they're situated in Charlotte. But immediately they were like, we want to feature our people. We want to feature the people of the company. We want to feature the fact that we are a woman-led organization. We want to put our buyers on, like, we want to do customer testimonials. Like, we at no point in that meeting talked about the features of the home or the construction process. They just wanted to feature the people and tell the story of the brand through the people, which I thought was such an interesting, and of course, like, I loved it. Like, I thought it was so interesting right out of the gate. They were like, let's feature the people when they had this beautiful product they could have talked about. So that was a rare example. Normally I'm the one who's like kind of trying to like find another angle there, but they just came to it naturally, which is kind of in line with what we're talking about. So Nacho and Susan, just really quickly, any like very specific examples where you've seen somebody doing it well already?
I just have here this map of Starbucks. I like very much Starbucks, and the way it was born in Seattle and so on, and the way they have grown up. But if I have to choose a brand, I would say Patagonia. Patagonia, they have these outdoor jackets, and
Yeah.
actually one of their most famous campaign, it was that they do not buy this jacket. Actually, they were doing that. I think it was on Black Friday or Christmas. Don't buy this jacket. So it was the anti advertising. It was totally counterintuitive, but demonstrating that there are further values that if you don't need it, I mean, let's preserve the environment. I mean, they're really invested, really committed with the environment and with the outdoors. Which is the reason we need a Patagonia jacket to go to those places.
Yeah. Yeah. They are a great example. Great example.
I
Susan,
really,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, you can't really find a better one than Patagonia. I mean, this is a company that gives employees time off to go to rallies on behalf of the earth.
Yeah.
They do that for their employees. They feel so strongly about sustainability and are committed to it. There are smaller brands that I really admire and love. I think that that away luggage does a really good job of that. They've been a real disruptor in the luggage space, because they really get a sense of how the traveler travels. And it's not just about my luggage. It's about, you understand how I like to travel. I think Airbnb is also really incredible at that. Some surprising ones, you know, that have taken us by surprise. I think here in the United States, State Farm Insurance, who would have thought, or Progressive, who would have thought that Flo and Jake and Mayhem, like the insurance industry, the most boring product on the planet, has wound up creating multi-millionaire personalities around in their own advertising to tell the story of what it is to be a good neighbor, to tell the story of someone who is so deeply in love with insurance, they can't talk about anything else. So from an advertiser perspective, you know, some of that might play out in the way that feels, that feels true. I think, there are other companies that are really struggling at the moment with their brand too. I think Volvo is trying really hard to make this break from safety to cool. And they had a huge launch and no one understood if they were still making cars, right? We can get really far away from our brand story to the point where it becomes unrecognizable. And then you wind up losing people who are dedicated and loyal to that brand.
Yeah, that's such a good point too. When you've sold a story for decades, as an example with Volvo, when you've sold that story for decades that you are the source for a safe automobile, and then you change the game, you're changing the story on people. They're used to that.
Meg, if you allow me one comment, Susan just reminded to me, I think a good example is Red Bull, the energy drink. Do you think that it used to be an energy drink that they did communication campaigns in order to sell drinks, but at the end they have become a media company that, by the way, sell drinks. That storytelling, that the stories of extreme sports, of Van Gouteners jumping from the stratosphere into this astronaut jump and doing absolutely amazing things. And by the way, if you can drink this energy drink that gives you wings, but they are really building so many stories around those extreme characters and adrenaline and being pushed up and exploring the limit and going to the next level. They really make a tribe around that energy drink.
That is so true. They're a great example of that. Okay, I want to talk we'll talk for about 5-7 more minutes. I want to then open it up for questions. So if you have any questions or you want to start thinking about that, we will have some time, probably about 10 minutes for some Q&A. I want to talk to you guys though first about the future of storytelling. So Nacho, I'd love to hear from you. What are some emerging trends in brand storytelling that you're aware of? I know you're very big on research and writing about the digital transformation, and I'm just curious, what are some trends you're seeing in storytelling coming up?
Well, okay, I will say nostalgic marketing of nostalgia. That this is not technological, but this is what happened with Cracked Barrel. This is what happens with the silver economy. As we the boomers, we are getting old. We try to remember the good old times, and everything that resonates with sounds like vintage, like we had the record player before everything become digital. Those stories, they're a little founder stories. They really resonate. That brands that can connect with a pre-digital era, they will do it well. Also, the transmedia storytelling. This transmedia means that a story can begin in TikTok with your users, and then can be happening in LinkedIn with your colleagues or with your staffs, and then can go to the real point of sale, and then can go from shifting from online to offline to online to offline through YouTube, all the social media in a seamless transition is very, very interesting. Especially, I am not a big fan of TikTok. I think it's a big time waster of the voter. But probably if you're a brand that want to connect with this Gen Z, probably you have to be there. And that connects with the artificial intelligence. AI is omnipresent. Then there is a light side and a dark side. they allow it, generative artificial intelligence allows us to produce many stories in real time and with a very amazing quality. But how authentic they are, how unique they are, but they can allow us to customize that are hyper personalization in real time. That you're seeing a video and can be personalized according to your likes, and you or Susan or myself can be seeing the same story with different ending and different characters, and that's something that has never ever happened before. So it's a superpower that we need to manage to do it right, and I'm not sure we will do that, but I think it's gives us a totally superpower, again, without jeopardizing authenticity and the transparency. And again, transparency, we need a reality without filters. We have been get used so much to adding filters to Instagram and to TikTok, and so it's hard to say what is real, is not real, is fake, is not fake, is just oversaturated, or is so. To again, that story harvesting, make it authentic without filters, with the real characters, with the real people, and again, last but not least, stories are getting more and more immersive and interactive. So communication has not always been a one-way thing. It's not only listening. It's historically in the Bible, in the good old times, it was the priest telling us the story, and we remember it, we interiorize it. But now it's really interactive, immersive. So and that I don't know, not get into the metaverse, but having this kind of the meta Ray-Ban glasses and so on, that probably we are going to need different devices in order to engage.
Yeah, that's such a good point. So Nacho brought up artificial intelligence, AI. I was going to ask Susan about this as well. I'm glad you mentioned it, Nacho, because I was going to ask you. Susan, I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on AI in storytelling right now? And, what's your advice on how a brand can keep that human touch, but also leverage technology and AI at the same time?
Oof.
I know.
Oof.
I feel like it's, all of us are probably going through the same thing at the moment. There's so much possibility. So because I work in innovation, many of my clients have been in AI for many years now. GPT is kind of the public facing interface for all of us with it. But and big companies have been in the world of artificial intelligence for a while, whether it's in manufacturing and robotics, or in all different kinds of banking and back-end processes that you probably wouldn't even know about. And you feel it when you're calling your hardware store, your big box hardware store, and there's not someone saying press 1, press 2, press 3, but rather you say, I want to speak with someone in tiles, and you just speak it and you're there. Well, that's AI. We didn't call it that back in the day. From a storytelling perspective, I love using ChatGPT and all the different AI platforms as a writing partner. So it's not that I want AI to write the story for me. I just am able to take my ideas that I've gleaned from the client and the conversations that I had. Maybe I've done interviews with 12 different people and say, ChatGPT, help me synthesize these ideas. And then I can put different layers on it where I say, great, let's talk about a brand narrative for Asia, right? Where I don't have to get on a plane and do that. And I can just begin to see a filter. I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to accept it, but I can take some notes from just stepping back from a moment and stepping out of my own head and using that lens. The other thing I like to do is I like to play. So I find the greatest creativity for me comes when I can play with the words. I'm not a visual thinker, but I am very much in the language. And so sometimes I will create a brand narrative, and then as a point of curiosity, I'll say, make it sound, ChatGPT, make it sound like Apple. Make it sound like Coca-Cola. I will take something that's like very technical, very tough, and I'll just start applying different lenses to it. To Nacho's point. It's like, we don't know what's real and what's fake. But I like using narrative lenses of different companies to say, I wonder what Nike would say. I wonder what Apple would say. I wonder what Deloitte or McKinsey would say. And because ChatGPT is able to go through every piece of literature that McKinsey's ever written, now I have a different backbone to go, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Exactly. Yeah.
it gives me different toys to play with. And that's how I think of AI for me at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good point. And Susan and I talked about that probably about a month ago, right? And she gave me that. She was talking to me about putting it through the brand filters for voice and tone, and I found that so helpful. But the work is truly a partnership with AI. It's not taking it hook, line, and sinker. It's not doing a good old copy and paste. It's okay, thank you for the brainstorm, and I can build off of this, or I can rip off of it, and I can do something with it. Because I think the problem is people might trust it too much, and they just kind of take it hook, line, and sinker. And I think if you think about it as a writing partnership, that sets the expectation up really well. Awesome. I would love to open this up. Maybe Jam can help me moderate this. I would love to take one or two questions. I see a question from Gabriella. Would you like to ask Susan or Nacho a question?
Yes, I have many questions, but I will
pick your number one question.
Nacho, tell me, what is your process of a storytelling harvesting? Because for me, that's the tough part, the harvesting of the storytelling.
So I didn't get what is the, sorry, I didn't get the first part of the sentence,
okay.
of the question.
Can you hear me well now?
Yes, I can. Please say again. I have some back now. Please say again, Gabriela.
What is the process of a storytelling harvesting? Okay. Because for me, that's the difficult part, all the harvesting to arrive to the final product.
Yeah.
Okay. Probably find a character, find somebody with some interesting story. Talk to the people, of the company, to either the founders, either some of the colleagues, the collaborators, the ones that are facing the customer. Usually people facing the customer, they have amazing stories of how they help other people to achieve their goals. And then find a challenge. Usually in any good story, there is a challenge. There is a challenge that has to be overcome. So how those characters and those protagonists and eventually their antagonists, probably they have to fight against a competitor, or have to fight against some boss that didn't understand them, or how they deal with a very, very extremely angry customer, and how they convinced him or convinced her that what they were doing the right thing. So try to make a framework with those values that you want to communicate. Because otherwise you will be just talking without any purpose. Try to connect it with a main character, with the protagonist, and with a challenge, and probably that will align together. How that obviously that challenge has to be in order with the purpose of connecting with those values, and that will get you going. Do not expect it to make it right the first time. So probably you will need to that story harvesting. You need to sow many seeds in order to harvest some good fruits. So keep on collecting, and maybe merging two of those stories will make sense. Or go, as Susan said, go to the founder, go to the purpose, go to the future. What is the vision of the company? How is it going to be? Why this company is still going to be relevant 5 years from now, 10 years from now? How we are saving the planet? How we are making people's life easier? So try to find a very big, very, very big challenge, and that will give you the inner compass in order to look for it.
Great, thank you, Nacho.
No, that was a really good question. I will go. I'm seeing two hands, so we'll get these two questions. Samuel, do you have a question for Nacho or Susan?
Yes. So I just want to comment the discussion we have today, because it really helps me as a technical founder. So it's eye-opening for me. Yeah. So my question is, like the example earlier, right? The Volvo. So it
Mm.
failed for it's struggling to resonate its story to their customers. Then my question is, how do you validate your story before you make the world known? And how do you make sure or have the high chance that your story will be resonate to the people? Yeah.
Mm.
Susan, you want to go for it?
Oof. So I like small group discussions, right? So first off, I want to test everything. It might be surprising to you to know that a lot of companies test their brand narratives, and American companies and companies in the UK test their brand narratives in Australia and New Zealand before rolling them out into the larger space. So that's the guinea pig space for a lot of brands as they try it there. I like small group discussions and getting feedback. I also like paper and pencil responses. So when you doing this on a computer is one thing, sitting down and printing it out with a red pen takes you right back to school. And there's something very human about doing this. So to Gabriela's point earlier, though, about like, how do you harvest and how do you test? These are two really big things. So I need to go through groups of people, but ultimately, because I'm outside of the organization, I need a few key stakeholders that I can really rely on to give me truth about the brand. Someone who's had longevity in the organization, someone who has a close connection with customers, someone who has a close, if not, they are the part of the executive leadership team at a big company. And for a founder who gets way too caught up in the product, I want to make sure that they're talking to customers and partners, because frankly, I don't believe you are as good as you say you are.
Yeah, that's
Until
me.
someone else says that you are as good as you say you are, or if those are the nuances. I do trust your vision. I do trust your past. I have a little bit of a question about whether or not you're able to deliver on all the things you say you can deliver. And then I get pretty ruthless and I get shorter and shorter and shorter. I think of a great brand narrative is like Danish furniture. It's very plain and very simple and beautiful, but it took a lot of work to get it to plain, simple, and beautiful.
Yeah, got it.
I will
Thank
say,
you.
what you say about Volvo, it reminds me another story of Volvo I think it was in the late 90s or early 20s, like 20 years ago, that Volvo was perceived as a Swedish, safe, reliable, a little bit of macho brand. So they wanted to connect with the female buyers, with the female decision makers. So and they did a car with a very big fancy mirror and with a very big glove department. So like people, ladies could store their purse in there. So they were doing it for the ladies, but without the ladies. So for the people, but without the people. So instead of co-creating with them, they didn't realize what you and it's a very interesting neuroscientific study of how men see a car as a horse that they need to talk about power and horsepower, and ladies and women see the car as a chariot, something that takes you safely to up to some place. So forget about the mirror, forget about making pink upholstery, but talk to the people. So be that authenticity, co-create with them. If you think that your story, you are making a story for your customers without your customers, probably you are losing something. You have a missing link.
Yeah.
Understand.
We have
Thank you.
one more question. I know we have like 1 minute left, so I want to honor. We've got one question. Is it Yogesh?
Yes, absolutely. Yogesh Wagle from India. My last
I'm
question
glad
to
you're
you,
here.
madam, yes, is to address to Susan. Susan, definitely storytelling is one of the wonderful art, but I would say it's different from. I mean, it's there is a geographical barrier to each and everything. I mean, what is there in USA is not there in India or China. What is there in China and is not there in USA. In fact, how can AI really cope up with actually these challenges of storytelling? Because look, my zone is separate, Samuel's zone is separate. Maybe, of course, I don't say Doug's zone, but someone zone is very much separate. Someone is in Philippines, like Gemini is from Philippines. So how can AI address this wonderful session of narrative building or storytelling? Over to you, madam.
Yeah, well, I think the AI models that have been developed at the moment are very American centric. You know, it's trying really to digest so much information, but it's not. So I'm an anthropologist by training. I am fascinated by all the different multicultural stories that we can tell. And in fact, it's our responsibility to make our story relatable to the places that we need to tell it. So we need to do a deep dive into the storytelling traditions of India and Africa, such a giant place, right? Whether it's any market that we go into, that we take the time and we educate ourselves. We're talking about ourselves with our brand narrative, but as we expand, we have to make sure that they're relatable. And so what is the best mechanism for telling a story in a different place? So I think the brand narrative needs to hold true to its center wherever it comes from, but the retelling of that story, that's where we listen to the customers, the employees, and our partners in those places to help us say, don't say it like that.
Yeah.
Maybe try saying it like this, or it feels really sweeter to the ear when we say it like this. And so that's how you get localization around stories. It comes from the hearts and the minds of the people that we work with in those regions.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one general theme, and then I'll wrap up here in a second. I think the general theme that I'm hearing is, storytelling doesn't happen in a silo. It can't be one person, one center of truth. It has to be, many people around the writer's room. It has to be different perspectives. It has to be given time and space as well. So it can't live in a silo. It needs to include a lot of different perspectives. Susan and Nacho, I'm so honored that y'all made time to be here. Thank you so much. You're both so wise and so gracious with your wisdom and your time. So I want to say thank you to both of you for making this a part of your day today. And Doug, thank you again for making marketing a conversation among the global chamber. So thank you.
Some really great points today. Thank you all for taking the time to share. I'm reminded with Susan's last comment about, I was reading a book this last week and the stallion story came up. I'd heard the stallion story from Shirzad Shamin in Positive Intelligence, the story about the old man with the stallion, and all sorts of things happen in his life. And always somebody judges what's happening as good or bad. And his point is always, we don't know whether that's good or bad. And part of that story is his son who gets very sick, but it seemed bad, but suddenly he was not drafted and gone to war and potentially died. So was it good or bad that he got very sick and then eventually recovered, et cetera, et cetera. So that story was told by a completely different person in a different book. And I'm not sure which one came first, but I thought, wow, that's a universal story that is human-centered. So thank you, Susan, for the comments there. And the other aspect of that is how you talked about how once your story has that core human connection, that it can be told and retold by people within cultures, the many hundreds of different cultures all around the world. I'd never had looked at it that way before. And so thank you for all of your insights today. And thank you for all your support and collaboration. You guys are geniuses. Have a great rest of your Friday and a great weekend, everybody. Take care.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.